Hey everyone, before we jump into this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you enjoy tales like this one. The family barbecue at my parents' house was in full swing. Laughter, chatter, the smell of grilled burgers filling the yard when Uncle Tom hit me with his usual question. So, Maya, what's new with you? Still fiddling with those computers? Before I could even open my mouth, Dad jumped in, always eager to take over my narrative. Maya's got herself some kind of tech job at one of those startups, he said proudly, as if he were introducing a quirky hobby. You know how these young people are, always playing around with apps. Actually, I tried to correct. I own a software company. But he was already turning to the cousins and uncles gathered near the grill. She's always scraped by, that one, he went on with a half laugh. Lives in a tiny apartment, drives that old Honda. Not like Alex with his law firm, or Jennifer, Dr. Jennifer now with her big hospital job. Alex smirked from his spot near the cooler, crisp polo shirt tucked neatly into his khakis. Maya's always been the creative type, he said, in that patronizing tone he probably thought was supportive. The artsy ones never care much about money. That's fine, though. Jennifer adjusted her sunglasses, giving me her best mix of pity and superiority. Someone's got to keep the creative world turning, she said, even if it doesn't exactly pay the bills. I took a sip of my beer and let them talk. My jeans and t-shirt were apparently enough to confirm their assumptions. To them, I was the eccentric sibling who never quite grew up. So what kind of software do you make? Aunt Linda asked sweetly, trying to show interest. We build systems that help manufacturing and distribution companies manage their operations, I explained. The silence that followed was telling. Blank faces. A few polite nods. Sounds complicated, Mom said finally. Is it at least steady work? You get benefits and all that? It's my company, Mom, I said with a small smile. I set the benefits. Oh, that's nice, she replied kindly, as if I'd told her I got a promotion at a call center. Maybe one day you'll get a real office instead of working from home. I didn't bother to tell her about my 15,000 square foot headquarters downtown, or the 120 employees who worked there. Explaining it would only confuse them. Dad flipped the burgers and kept narrating my life story like he was reading from an old script. Maya's always been independent, he told Robert, his business partner who'd stopped by for dessert. While her siblings went for stable jobs, she played with computers. Never one for security, but she's got spirit. That so-called tinkering had built a $50 million software empire. But I'd stopped trying to correct him years ago. My family had decided I was the struggling one, and nothing I said could rewrite that story in their minds. Maybe she'll meet a nice guy to take care of her, Grandma said with a gentle smile. A lawyer, maybe, or a doctor, like her brother and sister's spouses. Alex's wife, Sarah, nodded approvingly. Stability really matters in a marriage, she said. Jennifer jumped in again. You should really think about dating someone established, Maya. It could give you some balance. They carried on comparing salaries, promotions, and achievements. My turn always came with advice, never admiration. Have you ever thought about going back to school? Dad suggested, scraping the grill. An MBA could open some doors. Or maybe you could get a corporate job, Mom added. Someplace secure. You're smart. I'm sure someone would hire you. Later, while clearing plates, I overheard Dad talking to Robert again. She's having a rough time, Dad said, lowering his voice. Barely getting by. You know how it is with these startup people. No real security. That's tough, Robert replied. Maybe we can throw her a bit of consulting work. We're thinking of upgrading our systems anyway. Dad chuckled. I doubt she's up for big business software. Her stuff's more of a hobby. That hobby was quietly powering over 200 factories across a dozen countries. Apex Industries, my company, was rewriting how manufacturing worked. But all Dad could see was the old Honda and the modest apartment I'd chosen to keep. They thought my lifestyle reflected failure. The truth was it was a choice and a shield. 5 years ago, I learned what money did to people. When word got out about an early investment that paid off, friends turned into beggars with can't-miss ideas. Cousins became self-appointed financial advisors. Every conversation circled back to what I could do for them. So when Apex started making serious money, I decided to stay under the radar. I kept my small apartment, the beat-up car, the same clothes. I drew a modest paycheck and reinvested the rest. People stopped asking for handouts. I became invisible, just how I liked it. But lately, their constant pity had started to wear thin. Every gathering became a chorus of helpful suggestions on how to fix my imaginary problems. 3 months ago, while reviewing potential acquisitions, I noticed something interesting. My company's data showed which manufacturers were falling behind technologically prime buyout targets. One of those companies was my father's, Precision Manufacturing. For 25 years, Dad had run a respectable mid-sized operation making specialized parts for cars and planes. About 150 employees, steady revenue, around $30 million a year. He loved to tell people he'd built it from grit and long hours. But times were changing. Bigger firms were swallowing smaller ones. Technology was reshaping the entire supply chain. He didn't see it yet, but his company was standing on the edge of a cliff. Apex had already acquired 6 manufacturing firms quietly, integrating them with our software to cut waste and boost margins. We had 12 more deals lined up, and Precision Manufacturing was next on the list. My team had already begun due diligence. Once the acquisitions were complete, we'd control a major share of the automotive component network. We wouldn't just compete, we'd define the market. Dad still thought his struggling daughter was barely paying rent. He had no idea that the next major business deal crossing his desk, the one that might just save his company, would have my signature at the bottom. The team had just finished their final presentation, 15 acquisition targets laid out on the screen, each more strategic than the last. Precision Manufacturing topped the list. Together, they would secure complete dominance over the market. The total cost comes to $847 million, my CFO explained, eyes glinting with excitement. But the strategic value easily doubles that. Once these are ours, we'll have near monopoly control over the sector. I nodded once. Do it. By noon, the approvals were signed. By midnight, Apex Industries had reshaped the entire manufacturing landscape. That same evening, while the ink was drying on contracts worth hundreds of millions, my father was sitting in our family living room telling my relatives I was broke. We were gathered at my parents' house for Sunday dessert. Coffee cups clinked against saucers, the conversation light and familiar. Dad was mid-rant, explaining to Uncle Tom how I should give up my tech thing and try something more stable, like sales, when his phone rang. "It's Robert," he muttered, stepping into the kitchen. At first, his voice was calm. Then it grew louder. "What do you mean, acquired? By who?" The table went silent. Every spoon paused midair. "Apex Industries? Never heard of them," Dad said, pacing. "How the hell did they buy our entire sector?" Alex and Jennifer exchanged uneasy glances. I quietly took another bite of my pie. 15 companies? In one day. Dad's tone was climbing. "Robert, that's absurd." I could hear Robert's muffled reply through the phone speaker. "They can't just buy our suppliers and customers." Dad snapped. Robert's voice rose enough for all of us to hear. "Jim, that's exactly what they've done. Apex Industries bought the entire vertical chain. Suppliers, distributors, clients. They now control the market." Mom's face went pale. "Is the business in danger?" Dad waved a hand for silence, straining to keep up. "You're saying they own both ends of the chain? So if we don't sell—" Robert interrupted, his tone grim. "Then you'll be cut off. No suppliers, no clients. You'll be done within 6 months." The words hung in the air. Dad sank into a chair, phone still pressed to his ear. "How much are they offering?" 50, maybe 60 million, Robert said. "You won't have much choice. Whoever's behind this is a genius. They targeted every critical player. It's the smartest vertical integration move I've ever seen." Dad looked up then, realizing the whole family had crowded into the doorway, listening. "I'll call you back," he muttered, hanging up. He turned to us, face drained. "Some company, Apex Industries, just bought out most of our industry. What does that mean for us?" Mom asked weakly. "It means," Dad said, struggling to find words, "we might have to sell." Alex, ever the lawyer, straightened. "Dad, don't rush into anything. Get legal counsel. This could be anti-competitive. It's perfectly legal, I said quietly. Everyone turned toward me. Vertical integration, I explained. When a company buys suppliers and clients simultaneously, they control the whole production flow. It's efficient and it's within regulation. Your company can't stay independent now. Dad blinked. And how do you know all this? Because, I said, setting my coffee cup down, I'm the CEO of Apex Industries. The silence was immediate and absolute. Dad's mouth opened, then closed again. Alex looked stunned. Jennifer froze. Mom's eyes widened as if I'd spoken another language. I pulled out my phone and opened the news. The headline was splashed across every major business site. Apex Industries completes $847 million manufacturing acquisition spree. There I am, I said, turning the screen toward them. My photo from the morning press conference glowed under the headline. Dad took the phone with trembling hands. His lips moved as he read aloud. Maya Chin, CEO of Apex Industries, announced 16 strategic acquisitions to consolidate market leadership in the global automotive components sector. When he looked up, he was pale. You're Maya Chin? I'm your daughter, Dad. The same one you just told everyone was broke. I smiled faintly. The modest apartment, the old car, their choices. I reinvest everything into the company. Alex was the first to recover. How big is Apex? This quarter's acquisitions totaled $847 million. That's part of our growth budget. Jennifer blinked. This quarter, Apex is currently valued at about $2.3 billion, I said evenly. And yes, I hold controlling interest. Dad sat down heavily. You bought my entire industry. I bought what fit our long-term plan, I corrected. Your company happened to be in the way. So when I was talking about expanding, he said slowly, you already knew. Yes, but you never asked what my company actually did. Every time I mentioned enterprise systems or manufacturing analytics, you tuned out. Mom finally spoke. Maya, are you rich? I'm successful, I said. The wealth is a byproduct. Dad stared at me for a long moment. All this time, we thought you were struggling. You didn't think, I said softly. You assumed. His shoulders sagged. Why didn't you tell us? Because I wanted to know if you valued me for who I am, not what I own. The room was still. 2 weeks later, Dad received an acquisition offer from Apex, $75 million for precision manufacturing. It was generous, far above its appraised worth. He accepted, knowing there was no alternative. At the signing, he pulled me aside. This offer, he said quietly, it's too high. Why? Because that's what it's worth to my strategy, I said. And because you're my father. His eyes welled. I'm proud of you, Maya. I'm sorry it took me this long to say that. After that, everything changed, but not in the way I'd hoped. The family treated me differently now, careful, admiring, suddenly respectful. My once simple choices were rebranded as strategic minimalism. My independence became visionary focus. Mom went around telling everyone her daughter was a billionaire. Alex offered to manage our corporate legal work. Jennifer wanted to invest. Dad retired early and took Mom traveling on the proceeds from the sale. And me, I kept my small apartment and my quiet habits. They reminded me of who they thought I was when I supposedly had nothing, and how easily perception shifts when money enters the room. Apex now employed over 3,000 people across 4 countries and controlled a major part of the global automotive supply chain. But the lesson that stayed with me wasn't about business or wealth. It was about worth, the kind that can't be measured in millions. Sometimes, it takes building an empire to realize that the people who once dismissed you might only start to see your value when it profits them to do so.